As the sun dipped behind the hills of ancient Carthage, a quiet transformation unfolded. Streets that bustled with life by day now lay empty and reverent under the fading light. Inside, families gathered not around a table, but near shadowed doorways and cemetery gates, laying out bowls of milk, honey, and grain. These offerings weren't mere gestures, but a solemn feast for the unseen guests, the spirits of those long past. In this age-old ritual, Carthaginians blurred the line between the living and the dead, believing that such care could nurture and keep the ancestral spirits content and watchful. Imagine stepping into the soul of ancient Carthage as the sun dips behind the horizon and the city transforms under the veil of twilight. This is a time not of trepidation, but of reverence. The bustling streets, teeming with the crowds and noise of the day, slowly fall silent, and shadows deepen around the houses as their lights dim. In that charged silence, preparations are made for a ritual that defies time and space, a meal shared between the living and the spectral presence of their ancestors. In these moments, Carthaginians believed the boundary between the realms of the living and the dead became thin enough to traverse. This communion was not merely an act of remembrance, but a deeply felt obligation, a sacred duty where the past and present converged over shared meals. Outside homes and along the tombs, offerings were meticulously arranged, bowls brimming with milk and honey, dates, grains, all gifts for those who walked these lands before. Such offerings were not mere gestures of superstition, but acts of heartfelt communication, ensuring the goodwill and protection of the spirits who lingered nearby. These offerings carried powerful symbolism. Milk, so closely associated with nurturing and the continuity of life, and honey, known for its sweet endurance and preservation, formed the core of these ghostly feasts. Each offering was a tangible link to Carthaginian forebears, a demonstration of respect and an appeal for their protection. Engaging in these acts, the living kept alive the memories of their ancestors, believing neglect could lead to restless spirits seeking retribution. These rituals didn't exist in isolation. They were woven intricately into the societal fabric of Carthage. Night after night, they reinforced a collective consciousness where the interconnectedness of life and death was a fundamental truth. Executed with solemn grace, these customs blossomed into emotional ceremonies that celebrated a continuity unbroken by death. Sharing a meal with the departed, they renewed pledges to honour the legacies left behind. Stories of accomplishments, wisdom and guidance passed orally from one generation to the next. As the dusk settled over Carthage, the city seemed to pause, enveloped in an expectant silence. Vibrant and lively by day, it now embraced a solemn character, streets muted in anticipation of sacred rites. Homes became sanctuaries adorned with tokens of respect, where families gathered not in mourning, but in celebration of shared heritage. Children, observing these customs, learned their family histories through whispered stories and shadowed movements, each tale and jest reinforcing the living chain that bound them to their ancestors. Central to these rites was the hearth, where family members congregated, a place where warmth and memory converged. With each fire lit, smoke and whispered words rose skyward, stories shared, promises renewed. The living and the dead, united in this ritual, reaffirmed their bonds. Song and spoken word joined the feast, weaving a tapestry of memory that bound them closer to those who had walked similar paths. Through music and tales, wisdom and moral lessons were encoded, passed down as a living legacy. Even amidst the solemnity, humour found its place, A gentle jest shared in the company of those gone before imparted a warmth, embracing a remembrance that life persisted, animated by laughter and camaraderie. Yet as much as humour brightened the nights, there was always the underlying awareness that neglecting these rituals could lead to displeasure. Unfed spirits could bestow misfortune, a belief seamlessly integrated into the nightly proceedings. In the quiet spaces of Carthage's homes, a quiet anticipation reigned before the meal was shared. Between daylight and dreams, the city became a theatre for the unfolding mystery of these nocturnal gatherings. Modern eyes might see these customs as strange or even macabre, but for the Carthaginians they were heartfelt demonstrations of reverence and an acknowledgement of connection between past and present. As the feasting concluded and the embers dimmed, the echoes of a shared experience lingered. The vital task of remembrance achieved, the bonds between the living and those long past were woven tighter still. This shared experience bestowed harmony upon households, infused with mutual acknowledgement and history. As fires guttered and shadows lengthened, the night's offering settled into collective memory, a testament to shared humanity and the profound interdependence of life and death. A story steeped in authenticity, touching the heart of the human journey. With the final whispers of night, Carthage returned to the rhythm of daily life. Yet the silence after sunset carried echoes of communion, a testament to the enduring connection between the living and their forebears, embraced each night amid twilight's sacred feast. The Carthaginian ghost feast, steeped in history, draws its roots from the vibrant traditions of the Phoenicians. These seafaring ancestors were not just traders, but cultural torchbearers, believing firmly in a world beyond death. Spirits, for them, played active roles among the living, safeguarding and sometimes admonishing. As Phoenician sailors charted courses across the Mediterranean, they carried with them these sacred beliefs, where the departed were considered part of the family unit and navigators of destiny from their ethereal domain. Carthage, in its evolution, absorbed these traditions, nurturing them into customs that became the framework for a profound cultural tapestry. Each bowl of milk, each offering of honey, served as a tether, binding the living to their ancestral lineage through these ritualistic echoes. But the story doesn't end with Phoenician influence alone. The legacy of the ghost feast evolved in the intersection of North African cultural streams. Positioned strategically on the coast, Carthage became a hub of cultural confluence. Interactions with indigenous Berber tribes and surrounding North African communities infused the feast with a rich assortment of beliefs. The ghost feast burgeoned into a vivid interplay of practices, incorporating sacred fires and nature reverence, reflective of the region's soul. This fusion did not blur, but instead sharpened the feast's character, embracing a syncretism where new life was breathed into old customs. By integrating local flora and fauna into their offerings, Carthaginians cultivated a ceremony that thrived on diversity, mirroring the region's own vibrant nature. Timing was everything. These ghost feasts often aligned with death anniversaries or other sacred festivals scattered throughout the year. Such occasions transcended sorrow and became celebrations, acknowledging the spectral ties that knitted the living to the departed. Ancestors long gone were believed to linger in the periphery of daily life, presiding benevolently if properly revered. These rituals intertwined with agricultural cycles and religious rites across the broader Mediterranean, embodying themes of renewal. The spirits, through these orchestrated gestures of gratitude, were appeased and could, in unison with the earthly community, ensure the land's fertility and the people's prosperity. Offerings were not just gestures of memory, they were sustenance essential for harmony between worlds. Carthaginians believed that spirits required these offerings to continue their guardianship. Milk and honey were not arbitrary choices but deliberate selections, reflecting purity and a bond to the divine. The feast thus established a mutual pact. The living nurtured their spiritual predecessors in return for protection in this life, ensuring a harmonious continuity that was never taken for granted. This covenant underscored an unspoken understanding between generations, one that was renewed annually in a celestial handshake. Hosting these feasts was a meticulous affair. Timing had to coincide with precise lunar phases or astrological signs, echoing the beliefs in a cosmos governed by balance and rhythm. Guests, seen and unseen, were welcomed with care, ensuring that refinery and ritual precision populated each ceremony. Any deviation risked invoking displeasure from the other world, a perilous act among such superstitious awe. These rituals provided a compass in a world fraught with the unpredictable whims of the supernatural, making them both maps and safeguards for the spiritual voyagers. Furthermore, the Ghost Feast was a glorious celebration of kinship. No longer segregated by age or station, families united across generations, with each person playing a part in appeasing their elders' spirits. Tales spun in the firelight, rekindling the valour of forebearers and reminding the living of their roots. These gatherings were dialogues between realms, where the past offered guidance, acting as a moral beacon for navigating earthly turbulence. It was a shared communion, where spirits whispered wisdom into the ears of the living, entrusting them with their legacy. More than just a family affair, these occasions unfolded with grandeur. The staging of ghost feasts was an artistic tapestry. Vibrant fabrics adorned altars, scents entwined with melodies, and chants resonated through the night air. The performances, part song, part story, were entrancing, rekindling ancestral values and weaving dramatic narratives that reminded all of their shared history. In the ensemble of these ceremonies, certain figures stood as pillars of the practice. Priests or appointed women, steeped in ritual knowledge, orchestrated the proceedings, their voices guiding the spiritual conversation between the realms. They invoked spirits by name, safeguarding the feast's sanctity and ensuring its success. Each whispered invocation was a thread, stitching the torn fabric of time, allowing the spiritual and temporal to dwell in harmonious synchrony. Archaeologically, remnants of these ghostly gatherings offer a tactile window into ancient rituals. Excavated bowls crusted with offerings and inscriptions on votive items speak of practices long faded into the sands of time. These artifacts serve as silent witnesses to the dances of devotion that Carthage once hosted, proving that these gatherings were deeply etched in the cycles of everyday life. Ultimately, the Ghost Feast exceeded the sum of its parts, resonating with symbolism that carved a lasting niche in Carthaginian identity. Each carefully curated element was a testament to their worldview, where continuity bridged life and death, ensuring familial bonds were not torn by time's relentless march. Through this ritual, Carthaginians articulated a philosophy of eternal connectedness, where life's transient nature was embraced as part of a purposed cosmic design. These celebrations, richly layered with meaning, were not merely sustenance for spirits, but a nourishing of cultural identity, ensuring Carthage's legacy endured long after its silence fell. In the ancient city of Carthage, beneath the warm Mediterranean sun, milk and honey held a significance that transcended their simple earthly origins. Imagine, if you will, a society where milk does not merely quench a thirst or soothe a child's cries, but instead acts as a bridge to another world, a world where the dead still linger among the living. Carthaginians viewed milk as a primal symbol of life, embodying the nurturing spirit of motherhood. Its white purity signified transformation, a vital quality for those crossing the threshold from this world to the next. This mystical liquid was believed to sustain the ancestors, cementing unbroken relationships that reached beyond mortal confines. Honey, on the other hand, was the golden sustenance of the gods. To the Carthaginians, its sweetness was more than a sensory pleasure. It was a metaphor for immortality, an unspoiled essence that defied decay and time. Picture honey not just as a daily indulgence, but as a sacred pathway for the spirits, a gesture to sweeten their journey between realms. Together, milk and honey formed a sacred pair. Milk nurtured the bond between the living and the dead, while honey upheld the promise of eternal life. Preparing these offerings was no simple culinary task, but a ritual steeped in reverence and care. Fresh milk was handled with utmost respect, demanded purity, free of contaminants, and collected with due respect to its sacredness. Honey, often scarce and procured from wild hives or through meticulous cultivation, represented the community's esteem for the deceased. Through this careful preparation, the living displayed their commitment to maintaining the delicate balance that embraced both worlds. Presentation played a key role. Bowls of milk and honey were placed at tombs and altars, spaces where the earthly and ethereal met. Fragrant herbs or flowers often lent their scents to the air, a sensory enhancement to the spiritual ceremony. Through this, the living extended an invitation to the unseen, offering visible tributes along with their respect and remembrance. These gestures were more than offerings. They were acknowledgements of the bonds that continued to echo across the divide of life and death. The Carthaginians believed milk and honey carried profound metaphysical symbolism. Milk, with its lifeblood connection, fed not just the body, but the ongoing cycle of existence. It declared one's role in the eternal rhythm of renewal and honour, transcending the limitations of mere mortality. Honey too spoke volumes, a dialogue between the fleeting and the forever. It defied time's march with its preservative nature, anchoring souls in their eternal journey. By combining these elements in rituals, Carthaginians wove a tapestry of both the material and the spiritual. Curiously, the symbolic role of milk and honey was not confined to Carthage alone. Across ages and cultures, from Vedic hymns to Judeo-Christian traditions, these ingredients found their place in spiritual rituals, marking them as universal symbols of divinity and sustenance. In ancient Egypt, honey was buried with pharaohs to accompany them on their celestial voyage. The Greeks and Romans too valued its sweetness and immortal essence. These cross-cultural threads reveal a shared human attempt to connect the now with the eternal, the seen with the unseen. Even within Carthaginian mythology, tales abounded of milk and honey. These narratives illustrated cosmic balance, divine favour, and the celestial interactions that governed mortal life. Milk was depicted as a divine elixir, flowing from the heavens to nourish and sustain. Honey took on a mystical sheen, a potent reminder of the gods' benevolence and the exalted journey of the soul. Such tales were more than mere stories. They were the bedrock upon which the practice of offerings was built, merging narrative with ritual, tradition with belief. The acquisition of these sacred substances demanded ritualistic care. Milk, a gift from pastoral gods, required specific rites during milking to maintain spiritual cleanliness. The task was often accompanied by hymns, seeking blessings for the herd and the spiritual recipients. Honey harvesting too was sanctified in process, beekeeping seen as a divine partnership, with humans acting as stewards of celestial treasures. These actions were more than practical. They tightened the weave between the earthly and the divine. In Carthaginian society, the offering of milk and honey also resonated with social and cultural implications. Families gathered around these timeless rituals, fostering unity through shared traditions. Rituals acted as social levelers, drawing everyone, regardless of status, into the ceremonial fold. Communal participation underscored a shared identity, reflecting the values that held Carthaginian society together. Remarkably, the traditions surrounding milk and honey weren't just ghostly echoes of the past, they influenced daily life. Households prioritized these offerings as essential as the basic needs of bread and water. This interplay of routine and ritual infused every corner of life with spiritual significance, ensuring that households remembered their departed in everyday acts. Generational transmission of these practices was crucial. Elders passed down these rituals through stories and lessons, preserving a cultural memory that remained resilient even amidst external pressures. Their role sustained a cultural identity that lasted beyond Carthage's decline, through shifting sands of time and change. Today, the echoes of these ancient traditions endure. Across North Africa and beyond, the symbolic offerings of milk and honey continue to serve as testaments to cultural resilience. Modern iterations may reinterpret these ancient practices, yet the essence remains, an enduring bridge between yesterday and today, past and present, grounding us in the broader human saga. As twilight descended upon Carthage, a unique journey began, guided by reverent hands committed to bridging the realm of the living with that of the departed. Carved messages and engraved libation tubes weren't just relics. They were profound connections, linking those above to those at eternal rest below. In this ancient city, feeding the dead wasn't a mere ritual, it was an intricate tradition, layered like the souls it sought to nourish, beginning with the simple act of pouring milk and honey into the earth. The libation tubes of Carthage represented a perfect marriage of spirituality and engineering. Crafted from ceramic or bronze, these tubes weren't just devices, they were testament to a people profoundly respectful of their ancestors, embodying a deep understanding that death wasn't the end, but a continuation into another realm. Embedded in tombs, these tubes symbolized a bridge, a sacred passage through which the living could care for their departed. This understated act of feeding the dead wasn't about grand monuments, but about fulfilling promises through humble yet powerful gestures. Through these offerings, the dead were placated, spared restlessness, and the living were spared their displeasure. In the quiet embrace of night, messages inscribed upon these tubes carried more than just intentions. They transformed simple rituals into meaningful exchanges with the beyond. These weren't just names or words, they were personal communiques, ensuring the sustenance reached its rightful recipient. An incorrect offering risked provoking the discontent of the restless dead, inviting misfortune. Thus, crafting these inscriptions was a solemn affair, underscoring the importance of family and memory in Carthaginian culture. The materials used for these libation tubes, bronze and ceramic, were chosen with care. Bronze, known for its durability, mirrored the endurance of memory and tradition, while ceramic, with its earthy weight, resonated with humanity's connection to nature and the cycles of life and death. These choices weren't just practical, but symbolic, reflecting the Carthaginians' desire for these rituals to endure as long as the earth itself. Such materials ensured the durability of the tubes and encapsulated the eternal conversation between the living and the dead. Pouring milk and honey into these tubes was an act steeped in intention, not a mere task, but a choreography performed with purpose and reverence. Each pour was a reaffirmation of a pact, renewing the living-dead connection through generations. This ritual mirrored life's renewal, feeding spirits with nourishment and vitality. The tactile sensation of liquid moving through the tube turned the rite into a visceral experience, symbolizing the cycles of nature, a flow of energy transcending time. Carthage's tombs were more than resting places. They were stages for ongoing dialogues between current and past lives. Here, the architecture seemed to play its part, as if stones were whispering back promises to those gathered. Not an end, but a threshold. The necropolis held court for mortal matters, gifting the dead with unending affection, breathing life into what lay beyond death's horizon. Feeding the dead was no solitary endeavour. It was a shared cultural obligation that bolstered Carthage's communal identity. Families gathered at grave sites, bound by memories and cultural duty, not individual faith. These gatherings echoed the feasts once enjoyed by the departed, transforming remembrance into lively events that strengthened societal ties. By sharing these duties, Carthaginians ensured their ancestors' legacies lived on, perpetuated through shared acts of love and memory. Ghost feasts in Carthage aimed to nourish on two levels: to feed the spirits of the dead and to preserve the living's memory. Through this delicate ritual balance, the inevitable dance with mortality became less daunting, transcending the idea of permanence. The offering symbolised a dual nourishment: physical sustenance for the spirits and a preservation act for the living, cementing cultural and familial legacies. This interplay between life and death was a reminder that the past was not just remembered, but actively sustained by timeless customs. These rituals, however, were not mere responsibilities for the older generation. The youth were integral, learning and participating, ensuring traditions would not fade. Involving children in ghost feasts instilled the importance of these customs from an early age, creating a continuous thread of knowledge to carry into future generations. Through this, the Carthaginians fed not only their ancestors' spirits, but also ensured their cultural essence lived on, weaving an enduring connection across generations. The practice of feeding the dead invites reflection on how people have connected with the mysterious landscape of belief and memory. These Carthaginian rituals highlight a timeless dialogue between life and death, illustrating humanity's quest to transcend mortality. In every ceremonial act of feeding, the Carthaginians embraced the delicate dance between presence and absence, sustaining the dead not only through nourishment, but also in the profound act of remembering, a timeless affirmation of connection across the unseen, weaving a thread through life and beyond. In ancient Carthage, the practice of inviting the dead to dine was both a sacred duty and a communal bond, guided by those steeped in tradition. Women, particularly elder ones or those of high status, stood at the forefront. These women, respected for their life experiences and innate connection to life's cycles, became natural mediators between the worlds of the living and the dead. Their lifelong familiarity with these rites handed down through generations imbued them with a profound sense of responsibility and continuity. Yet they were not alone in these solemn endeavours. Priests and priestesses skilled in the sacred arts through rigorous education and temple service were essential figures. They ensured that these gatherings transcended simple family events, elevating them into solemn ceremonies filled with chants and rituals meant to honour the deceased properly. Central to these ghost feasts was a tradition as poignant as it was powerful: the speaking of names. In Carthaginian belief, to utter a name was to breathe life into memory, warding off the threat of oblivion that loomed beyond death. This act was not mere symbolism, it was a vivid reaffirmation of kinship and continuity. During these gatherings, names were spoken aloud, often with stories and anecdotes, weaving a tapestry of communal memory. The voice, especially when raised by women revered as custodians of these traditions, served as a bridge to the unseen, ensuring the spirits remained tethered to the family's narrative. The feast itself was an act of union between realms. The living prepared offerings of milk, honey, and other sacred foods, setting aside portions for their departed loved ones. This meal was a profound act of communion, underscoring the belief that sustenance could transcend the physical divide. By dining with the dead, families communicated love and remembrance, reinforcing the concept that life and death were threads of the same fabric. These meals weren't just about nourishment, they were declarations of the enduring bonds between kin, defying the finality of death. Women's roles in these rituals were both revered and indispensable. Despite living within a patriarchal society, Carthaginian women wielded significant authority in the spiritual and familial realms. They were the weavers of tradition, ensuring that customs were preserved and adaptively handed down without losing their essence. As mothers and caregivers, their duties transcended earthly life, acting as guides and caretakers in both the living realm and the spiritual. By preserving and sometimes modifying these ancient practices, they helped forge a connection not only with the past, but with a future built on the foundations of legacy and memory. The priesthood brought a divine authority to these gatherings, transforming them from mere familial obligations into rituals of cosmic significance. Priests and priestesses, arbiters between mortals and the divine, guided these feasts with precision and spiritual insight. They performed rituals with a flair that engaged both the tangible and the ethereal, embedding ancient beliefs into contemporary practices. In their care, a ghost feast became a testament to spiritual continuity, vital for maintaining the favour of the gods who, in return for such rituals, offered their blessings. These feasts were as much about ceremony as they were about spectacle, performing an artistic dance that conveyed respect and continuity in a language beyond words. Each gesture, from setting the table to placing each offering, was symbolic, charged with meaning and purpose. This performance wasn't just for show, it was instructive, teaching each generation the rhythms of life and death, movements resonating with collective significance. Such enactments not only preserved cultural traditions, but deepened the faith communities had in life's cycles. At the heart of these feasts was hospitality, a core cultural value that extended beyond the tangible, welcoming spirits as honoured guests. The careful preparation and offering of food were more than respectful gestures. They were acts of profound cultural significance. Meals of milk and honey were rich in symbolism, representing abundance and continuity, nurturing the bond between worlds. In providing for the dead as fervently as they did for the living, Carthaginians expressed an understanding that death transformed relationships into something that required ongoing care. the rituals sat on the precarious frontier between superstition and faith, reflecting the complexity of Carthaginian belief systems. For many, these rites went beyond simple acts of remembrance, blending practical traditions with metaphysical beliefs. Ghost feasts were essential for maintaining cosmic balance, warning of misfortunes awaiting those who neglected their ancestors. This intricate dance between reverence and superstition illuminated cultural attitudes that embraced both joy and caution regarding death, a powerful reminder of life's uncertain nature. The community spirit was integral to these rituals, ensuring they stretched beyond individual family duties to become shared cultural expressions. These gatherings fostered unity, allowing people to collectively honour shared histories, reinforcing societal bonds while emphasising identity and belonging. Children learned of their heritage through these traditions, passed down orally by elders, thus ensuring the perpetuation of community values. Through these communal acts, society found resilience, protecting against misfortune by honouring the past together. The legacy of the ghost feasts endures, influencing ancestor veneration in cultures worldwide. While their visibility may have faded with time, the principles underlying these rituals have left an indelible mark. The symbolism and communal aspects of Carthage's practices can be seen in modern traditions of ancestor worship, illustrating humanity's enduring connection to lineage. Across ages and regions, these beliefs offer a testament to the eternal harmony between the living and the dead, a legacy as vivid and vibrant today as in times long past. In the heart of Carthage, the earth holds memories, whispers of a time when the living dined with the dead, their worlds intertwined through rituals now unearthed by the diligent hands of archaeologists. Excavations at places like Birza Hill and the enigmatic Tophet shine a light on this ancient society that once thrived under the North African sun. Here, layers of history unfold, each stratum telling stories through tangible remnants of a past so richly entwined with the customs of spirit communion. Birza Hill, bustling centuries ago, now offers artifacts that tell tales of spiritual and material worlds converging. Honey residue clings to offering bowls like a ghostly fingerprint, remnants of meals meant to nourish both body and spirit. These vessels were crafted with care, their primary purpose, to serve even beyond the boundaries of life. Nearby, scattered remnants of animal bones hint at feasts shared not just with family but with those long past, suggesting meals as a bridge between realms. Inscriptions found at these sites speak across the ages, a testament to the dialogues once held with the deceased. Votive inscriptions to deities like Baal Hammon and Tanit reveal the hopes and fears of a people who believed fervently in the power of these divine protectors. Carved with precision and hope, these inscriptions were more than simple prayers. They were contracts seeking protection, gratitude, and favour. In their careful etchings, a map of spiritual life unfolds, plotting a course of faith intermingled with reverence for the past. As we dig deeper, the story unfolds in stone. Small slabs, perhaps tables for ghostly banquets, suggest that the dead were not just commemorated, but actively engaged in ceremonies. These stones, worn and weathered, extend an invitation to partake in the rituals of life, even in death. They stand as silent witnesses to a society that saw beyond the grave, treating the deceased as companions in the ongoing saga of existence. The necropolies of Carthage offer stark testimony to burial practices, rich in both complexity and reverence. Graves reveal cultural narratives, each one a chapter in an individual's journey through and beyond this world. Simple graves and elaborate tombs alike speak volumes about social structures and beliefs, with each site reflecting societal roles that persisted even beyond the veil of death. In these resting places, inscriptions invoke divine protection and prosperity, while offerings reflect the wealth or status of the departed. Through the lens of faith, Carthaginians saw their deities as vital participants in these rites, with figures like Baal Hammon and Tanit serving as spiritual intermediaries. Their presence is woven through every ritual, infusing each act with a significance that reaches beyond mortal understanding. This fusion of divine and ancestral reverence created a tapestry of beliefs where the borders between worlds blurred, connecting the living with their forebears in a cycle unbroken by the divide of life and death. Material culture, a treasure trove of symbolism, further illuminates these practices. Artifacts recovered, from intricate jewellery to stone amulets, speak to a people steeped in rich traditions of reverence and remembrance. Jewellery, exquisite and detailed, serves not only as adornment, but as protection, each piece a testament to personal and familial narratives. Carthaginian culture was deeply rooted in the cycles of life and death, viewing them not as separate phases but as parts of a continuum. Funerary feasts celebrated this cycle, affirming life even in the shadow of death. Through these communal meals, Carthaginians embraced a worldview where each ending was but a new beginning, where the spirit of community thrived amidst the seasons of life's eternal dance. With Carthage's fall, echoes of these rituals persist, whispered through modern North African traditions, where offerings continue to honour the dead. These rituals, transformed yet enduring, emphasise humanity's unyielding desire to connect across time. Reflections on Carthaginian practices provoke introspection about continuity and identity, urging us to consider the shared threads linking us all across the ages. As we piece together this ancient tapestry, archaeology serves as an invaluable bridge to our collective past. Each artifact unearthed speaks to an inherent need to maintain connections with ancestral legacies. These discoveries challenge our notion of temporal distance and remind us how near the ancient world remains, whispering its tales through stones and relics. Through the rediscovery of rituals long past, we engage with our history in a shared, sacred dialogue, partaking in the enduring banquet prepared by those who came before. In this communion between past and present, we find not just the ghosts of Carthage, but the vibrant continuum of human experience, eternal, intertwined, and ever unfolding. In the dimming twilight of ancient Carthage, there was no language more profound than the scent that filled the air. As families gathered under the watchful eyes of 1,000 stars, their shared breath mingled with the rising smoke of sacred fires. Each inhalation was rich with meaning, an unseen thread linking the earthly realm to the souls of the departed. The Carthaginians believed fervently in the power of fragrance to bridge realms, where the veil between the living and the dead was but a thin mist, easily parted by the tendrils of smoke reaching skyward. Frankincense and myrrh, precious resins exchanged across distant lands, carried both economic and spiritual weight. Their scents, released into the cool night air, were more than aromatic. They were prayers woven into each whiff. Frankincense spiralled upwards, a messenger dispatched to the gods, while myrrh, with its deeper, earthier bouquet, whispered of life's cyclical dance. These were offerings meant to comfort and coax the wandering spirits back to familiar ground, where their presence was celebrated rather than feared. At the heart of these gatherings, fire played its role as both guardian and guide. It separated the living from the unknown, casting a warm glow that transformed shadowed night into a haven. Around these flames, the living and their spectral guest shared a sacred communion. The gentle crackle and flicker of fire carried both purification and promise, dissolving old griefs and illuminating hopes anew. In its light, the act of sharing stories and memories became more than ritual. It was an unbroken dialogue that merged past and present, living and dead. Fragrant woods like fig and cedar were as essential to these ghostly banquets as the resins themselves. Fig, sweet and nurturing, reminded all gathered of life's continual renewal, a subtle nod from the earth to both realms. Cedar, with its strong, heady aroma, spoke of endurance and strength, seeking to perpetuate the goodwill and legacy left by those who had gone before. Each curl of smoke was a harmonious blend of scents, inviting spirits to join the living in a shared moment of remembrance, a testament to the ties that bind beyond the confines of the physical world. Fragrance carried its own symbolism to the Carthaginians, acting as a vessel for memory and honour. It was an emotional tapestry, with each scent interwoven with stories of old. As these ghostly gatherings unfolded, attendees found themselves wrapped in a sensory cocoon that reanimated the past. Aroma served as a wordless language, speaking directly to the heart, where it stirred remembrances with a potency no spoken tale could match. These gatherings were more than ceremonies. They were communal bonds renewed through shared aromas and storytelling. As the fire cast dancing shadows around, the air was filled with whispered anecdotes, each one tethered to a scent that linked individuals across time. In these moments, the living and departed found a tangible connection. Each breath drawn was not just an engagement with the past, but an assurance of a living legacy. The crafting of incense was an art steeped in both tradition and mystery. Carthaginian artisans approached this task with a delicate balance of skill and sacred intent, merging resins and herbs into fragrant offerings that promised to open pathways between worlds. To light a stick of incense was to unlock a sensory feast, transforming the mundane air into a vessel of memory and divine interaction. Within this fragrant panorama were the myrrh burners, custodians of scent and memory. Their role extended beyond mere ritual duty. They were the keepers of aromatic wisdom, ensuring that each burn was potent and purposeful. Through their craft, they guided the smoke upward, ensuring that every rising plume carried whispers of the past with it, a gentle reminder of the souls that still lingered in every fragrant thread of smoke. Fragrance was more than just an environmental detail. It was perceived as a spirit in its own right, capable of interaction and expression. Each tendril of smoke seemed to dance with its own life, a spectral participant in the feast, bearing witness to tales of old. These aromatic spirits didn't just disappear into the night, they carried with them echoes of history, resonating with the breaths of those long departed before vanishing back into the ether. In a deeply personal sense, scents acted as powerful triggers for memory, casting those gathered into a reverie of recollection. For the Carthaginians, smell became a direct link to the past, compelling their minds to traverse time and space with each scented inhalation. The ghost feast wrapped attendees in an evocative experience, their sensory dialogue reinforcing the narrative of heritage and community. Thus, the ancient map of their world unfolded not just through memory, but through a fragrant trail leading back to where history and mysticism intertwined, a vivid tapestry marked by the sense of the afterlife. In ancient Carthaginian tradition, neglecting the ghost feast was a mistake fraught with peril. The dead, far from being mere memories, were considered potent entities, capable of blessing or cursing from beyond the grave. A home that skipped this annual ritual found itself shrouded in misfortune. Crops might inexplicably wither, livestock could falter in health, and families might battle unexplained illnesses, untouched by mortal remedies. To the Carthaginians, these weren't random misfortunes, but powerful messages from the spirits, signalling a breach in the sacred order. Recordings from the past, such as funerary tablets, spoke with a chilling clarity about the lemures, restless spirits driven by an insatiable hunger. These roamers, unappeased by offerings, haunted dreams with their silent cries, appearing not with words but through the visceral pangs of the forgotten. As if responding to a deep internal instruction, the Carthaginians understood that sustaining harmony depended heavily on remembering those who came before, ensuring that the spirits did not cross into the realm of the living seeking what was mistakenly withheld. Artifacts unearthed at places like Burza Hill provide tangible proof that the anxiety of forgetting an ancestor was a very real concern. Votive offerings and inscribed tablets reveal how communities implored the dead to remain at peace, reminding us how critical it was to maintain a strong tie between the living and the spectral world. These rituals weren't confined to family alone. An untended spirit troubling a household could incite a collective response. Whole towns might come together, conducting public ceremonies to quell the wrath of a hungry spirit, thought to upset anything from the weather to the fate of empires. Skipping a feast day was more than mere forgetfulness. It was akin to disrespect, a concept alien to the Carthaginians, who revered life on all planes. The spirits, reliant on these rituals for their own journeys, faced an uncertain transition without them. The consequences of neglect were no bedtime stories. Accounts tell of families having ignored these vital rites, dissolving into madness that seemed akin to possession, a dark spectre of past misdeeds unleashed upon the living. While modern scholars might suggest psychological underpinnings, the consistent alignment of such episodes with missed ceremonies bears witness to a time when spiritual and mental realms merged seamlessly. Ritual lapses turned ancestors into shadowy figures, whispering across the veil, casting darkness into the corners of daily life. Entire legends grew from these lapses, warning the living of the duty to honour commitments to the deceased. Across communal memory, whispered tales of failing crops and deliberately unleashed plagues emerged, narrating how once revered ancestors could become unwelcome agents of discord when neglected. This should remind us all how closely tied ancient societies were to these beliefs, entrusting their stability to the forebears laid beneath the earth. On those harrowing occasions when rituals went undone, stories circulated of the dead making their spectral presence known, stirring the night with their presence. Among such stories was the tale of Erastus, a once-honoured ancestor now reanimated by neglect. His revival warned of the dire repercussions of ritual oversight, pressing the living to appease these shades with offerings, lest they lose both peace and prosperity to spirits claiming their due across realms. Failed harvests were seen not merely as agricultural failures, but as symptoms of spiritual neglect. Carthaginians believed prosperity mirrored their bond with the dead. Thriving fields were a sign of honoured ancestors, barren ones a symbol of spiritual estrangement. The hungry dead were not only family, they wove themselves into the landscape, threatening communal survival when forgotten. This is echoed in historical narratives, recounting the mounting panic when yield turned to dust, driving the anxious community to seek answers from priests. The belief in nightmares as omens turned these nocturnal terrors into more than just bad dreams. Carthaginians saw them as silent communications bridging worlds, warning of neglected duties. Numerous journals from the time confirm the prevalence of these eerie visions among those who ignored sacred obligations, leading to real-world consequences, failed endeavours, personal discord, extending the shadows of dreams into daylight. Ghostly retribution was no mere children's story, but a potent cultural deterrent. To breach the pact with ancestors meant inviting their displeasure, risking the invisible influence of the past on the present. Ghostly revenge wasn't just folklore, it was embedded in the cultural fabric, ensuring remembrance through fear of the spirit's wrath. When families finally sought priestly counsel, after prolonged suffering, ancestral grievances would often root their hardships, solidifying the belief in these rituals as necessary for tranquility. This wisdom became an intergenerational tapestry, a narrative safeguard against catastrophe. Elders frequently iterated warnings, ensuring that the wisdom behind these practices became an ongoing dialogue with the future. Each unfulfilled ceremony was a story left untold, a testimony to the gravitas of maintaining these traditions. Redemption, though, was always near at hand within the ghost feasts, beyond their penitential role. They became bridges for healing fractures in the spiritual order. When performed with sincerity, these rituals brought the living and the departed closer together, mending the disruptions that neglect once created. Carthaginians met this task joyously, each offering another stitch in the communal fabric, each prayer a token of understanding across generational divides. Thus wove the enduring narrative, a society living in balance, upheld by rituals that ensured peace through remembrance, echoing the eternal bond between those who live and those who once did. Imagine arriving at the bustling port of ancient Carthage, a city alive with the scents of the Mediterranean, and whispers of rites no Roman or Greek traveller fully understood. The intriguing rituals of Carthage captivated outsiders, shrouded as they were in mystery. Greeks and Romans viewed these ghostly feasts with a mix of fascination and revulsion, deeply intrigued by tales of milk and honey offered not to the living, but to the invisible shadows of the past. Chroniclers like Diodorus Siculus and Pliny the Elder eagerly recorded what they saw, but their accounts were often coloured by misunderstanding, casting sacred Carthaginian customs as mere superstition. These misconceptions betray not only the biases of the time, but also an outsider's awe of a practice that seemed to bridge the gap between worlds. Despite this lack of understanding, foreign observers glimpsed a profound familial duty at the heart of the Carthaginian ghost feasts. This wasn't entirely unlike the Roman ethos of pietas, albeit expressed in gentler, quieter tones than Rome's public spectacles. While Roman funerary games were loud and grand, Carthaginian rituals thrummed with the hushed intensity of family lines extending backward through time. To the Greeks and Romans, accustomed to distinct divides between life and death, the Carthaginian practice of treating ancestors as active, almost tangible members of the household was both unsettling and fascinating. It whispered of an unbroken, unyielding connection to the past that stirred existential thoughts within these ancient onlookers. Within the Roman and Greek traditions, moral judgments often overshadowed genuine understanding of Carthaginian ceremonies. Carthaginian ghosts, famed in their communion with the living, became symbols of unchecked superstition to those who prided themselves on cultural supremacy rooted in rationality and order. The very notion of engaging closely with the deceased was seen as a troubling erasure of boundaries. In the Greek worldview, which celebrated grand public ceremonies as expressions of one's place in society, the Carthaginian spirit feast seemed alien. Similarly, Roman rituals, structured and state-approved, contrasted sharply with Carthage's familial intimacy. Yet amidst the critiques there was admiration and envy almost. Witnessing the seamless integration of everyday life with the spiritual realm challenged Greek and Roman observers to reconsider their own beliefs. In an era where death shadowed life so closely, the Carthaginian model offered a comforting continuity. Life didn't end, it transformed, and ancestors were always near. This contrasting approach fascinated those who felt estranged from their own ancestor-driven narratives, as these extant dialogues speak to twofold envy. One for the spiritual consolation these rituals evoked, the other for cultural unity that seemed lost to distant outsiders. Known for their diplomacy and trade expertise, the Carthaginian ghost feasts subtly influenced their diplomatic engagements. Outsiders often considered these traditions esoteric, yet they testified to Carthage's deeply woven spirituality and resilience. Their diplomacy was steeped in ancestral honour, not just seen through envoys or treaties, but through an unmistakable identity derived from the past. Such expressions of cultural and spiritual continuity resonated beyond political relations, with both Roman and Greek cultures finding echoes of shared values, even admiring this continuity amidst political strife. The destruction of Carthage in 146 BCE might have erased much of the city's physical presence, yet its rituals endured, dispersed among rural communities, and even woven into the threads of Roman customs. Carthaginian traditions quietly merged into North African practices and persisted in subtle forms, echoing through the centuries. Foreign chroniclers, through their initial fascination and bewilderment, unwittingly preserved elements of these ghost feasts, cementing them in the annals of history. As survivors spread across the Mediterranean, so too did their customs, becoming interwoven into a collective cultural heritage. Greek philosophy also found itself pondering these practices, viewing Carthaginian rites as tangible instances of man's eternal grappling with mortality. Figures like Herodotus and Thucydides considered these traditions not just as peculiar customs, but as windows into broader questions of human experience, fueling philosophical debates that enriched the halls of Greek scholarship. This unintended gift of Carthage, a muse for reflection on the soul, subtly urged Greeks to reconsider their narratives, thereby intertwining Carthaginian mystique with their own philosophical discourse. In the Roman world, Carthaginian rites subtly influenced perspectives on familial loyalty and spiritual interaction. Some Roman thinkers admired the devotion within Carthaginian rites, finding, within their reverent treatment of ancestors, a mirror for Roman discussions on pietas. These perceptions influenced Roman thought subtly, infiltrating the considerations of tradition within the evolving tapestry of Roman culture. Carthaginian ghost feasts, through their resilience and memory, wove an intricate tapestry of influence across the Mediterranean. Becoming a part of regional ceremonies from the Roman Parentalia to All Saints' Day, these rites heralded a spirit of connectivity that knew no borders. Whether in the echo of whispered names, offerings at graves, or festivals celebrating ancestors, the influence of Carthage's intimately reflective feasts persisted, quietly testifying to a city's enduring legacy, a testament to the indomitable spirit of memory and belief that continues to transcend time and adversities, echoing through the corridors of history. In the year 146 BCE, Carthage met its terrible fate at the hands of Rome. The city that once thrummed with life found its skies darkened by smoke, and its streets crackling under the weight of flames. The Roman victors sought not just to defeat a distant rival, but to wipe clean the slate of Carthaginian culture and religion. They knew, though, that overpowering a people was simpler in battle than in erasing the enduring whispers of their past. As soldiers and scholars tore down the city's structures, Carthage's soul slipped through their fingers like sand, persisting in the deep corners and cracks where even Rome could not reach. In the aftermath of destruction, the Berber tribes of North Africa emerged as inadvertent guardians of Carthaginian traditions. The essence of Carthage's spirit feasts found sanctuary in the oral traditions of these tribes. Bread, humble and enduring, replaced the grand offerings of old, while milk remained as a bridge between worlds. Ancestors were welcome to companionship beneath the flickering flames of candles, their shadows dancing in silent communion. Rome, in its aggressive quest to erase, had overlooked the persistence of culture moving quietly among the Berbers, a testament to the resilience of those who carried sacred customs forward, even in the face of imperial erasure. Beneath the layers of soil and time, Carthage's secrets lay waiting to be found again. Today, archaeology serves as the historian's flame, shedding light on rituals once thought extinguished. In the quiet expanse of Carthage's ancient necropolises, archaeologists uncover pottery shards and libation tubes, relics of a world where the living and dead dined side by side. These objects, seemingly innocuous, tell tales of a community steadfast in its devotion, adhering to old rites even under the watchful eyes of Roman conquerors. Through each dig and discovery, a picture emerges of a people unyielding in their spiritual duties, committed to their ancestors in quiet but powerful defiance. As cities succumbed to the omnipresent gaze of Rome, hidden rural villas became clandestine theatres for these forbidden rites. Away from prying Roman eyes, tables continued to be set for ancestors. Milk and honey continued to be offered. Albeit veiled under the guise of Roman customs, these spaces, amid the stillness of rural life, enabled Carthaginian traditions to whisper defiantly against the backdrop of an empire's dominance. The spirit of the ghost feasts endured in these pockets of resistance, where families under starlit skies preserved the fierce ancestral ties that Rome sought to sever. The adaptability of Carthaginian rites in the face of Roman dominance is a story of cunning perseverance. Elements of the ghost feast shrewdly mingled with Roman customs, allowing their essence to surface within accepted Roman practices. Bread, wine and lamps, a trinity familiar to Roman rituals, served as proxies for the milk, honey and incense offered to Baal Hammon and Tanit. Roman gods unwittingly received tributes meant for deities long revered in Carthaginian heart, symbolising endurance and affinity to ancestors who could no longer speak but lingered in memory. In a world where written records were manipulated or destroyed by Rome's narrative, the oral tradition served as the vessel for preserving Carthaginian culture. Through hushed tales spun by firelight, grandparents passed down the stories of their forebears, tales filled with feasts for the departed and visiting ancestors that spanned the veil between worlds. These spoken histories did more than simply preserve a language. They maintained an intricate dance of life and death, presence and absence, memory and forgetfulness. Thus, under cover of night and the glow of fire, Carthage's echoes continued to murmur their wisdom into unguarded ears. In the religious practices of North Africa today, traces of Carthaginian rites find new life. The fabric of these ghost feasts can be seen in rituals honouring saints and ancestors, bridging past and present, the living and the dead. Echoes of these ancient rites weave into the tapestry of Islamic and Christian rituals across the region, standing a silent testimony to a religion dissolved but not forgotten. They are unspoken legacies, subtle yet tenacious, bearing witness to the enduring spirit of those who once thrived along Carthage's shores. In contemporary times, a cultural renaissance seeks to revive the shadowed practices of history. Enthusiasts and scholars alike strive to uncover and reconstruct the lost threads of Carthage's ghost feasts, long buried beneath layers of conquest and forgetfulness. Through this reclamation, seeks to revive the bond between past and present, offering a narrative of continuity where time had once seemed to fracture. Openly, in celebration of heritage, these rites find expression once more, honouring a legacy resilient enough to cross centuries. The journey into the heart of Carthage's ghost feasts, however, remains fraught with challenges. Scholars labour to untangle centuries of bias and distortion cast by Rome's accounts. The scarcity of untainted primary sources turns research into detective work, searching for truths amidst Roman exaggerations and myth. With careful hands, researchers sift fact from fiction, navigating the ghosts of interpretation that hover ominously in the margins of history. The legacy of Carthage's ghost feasts pulses in the veins of time, shaping modern narratives that resonate far beyond its ancient origins. Whether in the colour and celebration of Dia de los Muertos, or the solemnity of All Saints' Day, the spirit of communal remembrance manifests globally. The ghostly echoes of Carthage remind us that in every ember, every shadow, lies an ancient whisper defying the silence of ruins. And in our acknowledgement of these ancestral bonds, we find a shared humanity that transcends the finality of conquest. As we conclude this journey through the haunting hallways of history, if you found this tale compelling, don't let it be confined to whispers. Like the video, subscribe and join us as we unravel more stories where the past calls out to the present. 一言我发